We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Thursday. It's been kind of a busy week. So, I needed some help today. I called in another listener guest. Actually, he called me and I said, hell yeah, come on, because I could use the help. And it's Tony you're from South Carolina,
South
correct?
Carolina. That's right.
South Carolina. Now, Tony's been on a few times, and it's always a great show when he's on. He's insightful. He knows what the fuck he's talking about. And those are my favorite guests. And we're pretty lucky with listener guests. They all do pretty well. So, Tony, you've been gone a while. I haven't heard from you. What the fuck you been up to?
Well, as you know, I'm a retired boomer, a retired military officer, retired JROTC high school instructor, and I run a lightsaber combat school. The lightsabers combat school it's just going great. A documentary was released today by a student who runs a media company, so we had a documentary out. I'm going to be featured in a military magazine, so it's going to be one of those one-page features about a military officer, and I worked on it with the writer today. We are going this Saturday to a natural history museum, and we are putting on a show. So we're mostly a sport, but occasionally we do shows. We are a Lucas Vision official fan club, so they send us opportunities. So we're going to be at a semi-pro baseball game in the springtime. And of course, springtime is when all the Comic Cons and all those kinds of things.
Right.
And we show up, and I bring my students, and we bring a bunch of equipment, including speakers. And I mean, speakers like electronic speakers, loudspeakers, bullhorns, the whole thing. And our kids and my students put on a heck of a show. So that's been a lot of fun. And then, of course, today's been a great day because of the magazine piece and the fact that the documentary got released on Aiken Saber Academy. But then it tops off with being on your show, which I haven't been able to do for personal reasons for quite some time. So
Yeah.
it is just a thrill and an honor to be on Rational Boomer.
So what you're trying to say is you really haven't had much going on. It's been pretty slow. You're an old retired guy.
No. Yeah, I'm an old retired guy. Get ready to just play pickleball.
Yeah, pickleball. Yeah, my wife has been wanting me to do
And
that.
shop at Publix with the rest of the senior citizens on Wednesday when it's hard.
But I had a big day too. My wife and I picked up some chicken wings and went and played hide and seek with my granddaughter. So it was pretty hectic. It was pretty intense. I give you credit, for a retired guy like myself, you keep pretty busy. And I do all I can to not keep busy. My wife says, you want to go do this? God damn it, I got to do some TikToks or I got to do a podcast. Long as I can be sitting on my ass in my living room just talking, I'm good.
Absolutely. And I have granddaughters as well. I have 3 granddaughters, 2 who live close by. So every other Saturday, it's take one granddaughter of 6 to gymnastics, take them to school, pick them up from school. So it's an amazing how young children can just wear the hell out of us, because I have no idea where they get the energy from.
Oh man, I had no idea either. I do get tired. Let's talk about what's going on because there's been a lot going on this week. Today, there's something big going on that we'll get to. But the big news yesterday was after all the complaining and whining and bitching about the border and how Joe Biden isn't doing anything, the Senate had a bipartisan bill that they figured out, gave Republicans pretty much everything they wanted. It's surprising that the Democrats gave in that much, but they really want to make sure that Ukraine is taken care of, so they gave in. And the Republicans, once again, stepped on their dick. They shot down the bill in the Senate, and their one chance to get a really good border plan is out the window because come 2024, and when the Senate and the House are Democrat, they're never going to get that chance again. They fucked up.
This was the bill that they have wanted for 20 plus years if they complained about the border, and every single thing that they wanted. And it was every single thing that pretty much the Democrats were opposed. There wasn't really that much other than the funding for Ukraine and Israel in there for the Democrats. And the Democrats went along with it because they're patriots. And the Republicans, they just bow down to the orange gorilla that is is running a campaign, and he said, kill the bill so I have something to run on. And they destroyed the bill. As bad as, it's a shame, because I used to think, especially the Republican senators used to be patriots, and they would do, in the end, they would do what was in the best interest of the country. And generally that meant compromise with the Democrats on whatever needed to be compromised. They'd get some stuff, we'd get some stuff. Wouldn't be a win-win for anybody. And they capitulated, and they've been capitulating little by little over this last week. It is a shame to watch such old men be cowards to somebody who's so corrupt, and frankly, who's got like an IQ of about 80, if he's got that high of an IQ. I don't understand it. In the House, well, that bill was going to be dead on arrival, because the Speaker of the House is just ridiculous. He's not prepared for that job. He's proved it this week. We will talk about that in a little bit, but Johnson just is not a very good speaker. I don't think he's going to last much longer, to be honest, because it's pretty obvious that he's in over his head. Pelosi would never bring anything to the floor for a vote unless she knew she had the votes on her side, and they weren't even close on everything they voted for. So yes, this border bill may never come back in this form again. And you said step on their dicks. Yeah, they basically stepped on their dicks. They ripped their dicks out of their bodies and offered it up to, Donald Trump, and said, here's my dick. Well, use it as you see fit.
Well, and the thing about it is what's confusing to me is, after his repeated losses and the troubles he faces, he's literally in a tailspin. He's spiraling out of control. There's no other way this can turn out than him crashing. Why is it they still refuse to step away from him? I mean, common sense. If you had a business partner or a friend that was in the position Donald Trump was in, you or I or anybody else would say, I got to get away from that. I don't want to be collateral damage. But apparently they don't care.
I think the only explanation, and the only one that I've heard for their cowardice, is that they are afraid of his base. His base weren't there before he ran in 2016. Those were low information voters who probably didn't vote, but they are afraid of his base coming after them on a physical level and threatening their families. That's what I've heard. It's the only thing that kind of makes sense, but the fact is that they're political cowards, and frankly, they're not patriots. They might as well just rip those flag pins off their little expensive suits and toss them in the trash, because they don't deserve to be wearing those things.
Well, even Mitch McConnell usually pushed back against Donald Trump. He was part of this whole process to negotiate this bipartisan bill. He was for the bipartisan bill. And then at the last minute, like all the rest, they said, yeah, maybe now's not the time. This Langford guy, who was one of the architects of the bill, said he would vote against it because it's just not the right time. Well, that's ironic, because we keep hearing about how this is such a horrific, urgent crisis. Mike Johnson had to go down, and all these senators had to go down to the border because it was a crisis. And now they're saying, well, we don't hate the bill. It's just not the right time. Where's the fucking urgency? All of a sudden, there is no urgency.
Well, let's talk about Mitch for a second. Mitch has definitely lost a lot of steps in the last year and something. So he's nearing the end of his tenure. But I will say he knows how to count the votes. And he counted the votes in private with his caucus, and he saw the votes weren't there. So it made no sense to bring the bill up and have it go down and defeat in a vote off. So without him knowing about it. So he knew about it. So he let the bill die. And it's a shame, because I really truly think Mitch is, in his own way, though corrupt, is reasonably patriotic, and I think he was in the right place for both Ukraine and Israel. But he could see the writing on the wall. That bill wasn't going anywhere because his caucus let him down. And even if the Senate passed it, and they could have passed it with Democratic help and reached the 60 vote threshold, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. It went over to the House and it wasn't going to go anywhere over there.
I had some hope for the House only for this reason. I thought it was going to pass the Senate without a problem. I mean, it's bipartisan. Everyone was talking positively about it until Donald Trump chimed in. I thought when it got to the House, this is what I was thinking could happen. You know, we saw Mike Johnson and MAGA screaming and yelling before the budget bills or the spending bills and how they were going to close down the country. And at the last moment, you know, they stood strong until the last moment and they caved to the Democrats and Joe Biden because they know it was going to make them look bad. They did that twice. They fought it hard and then they caved in. And I thought in this case, if that bill gets to them, we might be in a similar situation because somebody's got to be smart enough to understand if you shoot down that bill, you're going to get the heat for it. Joe Biden even said that he was going to make it part of the campaign, and that's the smart thing to do. They wanted to take Joe Biden to task for not doing anything with the border. And now he can switch it around and say, no, it's you motherfuckers that don't want to do anything with the border. They knew that's what was going to happen, and they still couldn't pull it off. It's just fucking truly amazing to me. It's a stupid strategy and stupid business.
If Johnson had let the bill come to a vote, I believe there were enough Republicans, along with all the Democrats, to have passed the bill.
I
But
do too.
Johnson wasn't going to let that happen. As far as the bill failing, their base is not going to know the difference anyway. There's not enough intellect over there. So who do we need to convince that this was their fault? Well, we need to convince the independents, and the first opportunity would be in the State of the Union.
Right.
And so the Democrats, and particularly our leader, Joe Biden, had better come out strong. I have a Cobra Kai shirt on, and it's got some words here. It basically says, strike first, strike hard, no mercy. And unfortunately, I just don't see that in Joe Biden and the Democrats.
No.
They have enough ammunition now. They should be screaming about this bill, abortion, about the corruption of Donald Trump, and they should they have a triad of issues to bring before the public, and they need to yell. They need to win over all the independents. I don't know what's going to happen with the young people at the end. They're being silly about what's happening in Israel, I think. But I get it. I mean, I get it. But if they don't come home and they don't vote, it's going to be their hides. But we have independents that vote, and we particularly have women. And then you've been a big proponent of saying that abortion issue is going to come back to haunt them. Well, now we
Absolutely.
can add the border. We can add the hypocrisy of the border bill, and we definitely should be screaming about Ukraine. And we should be screaming hard about Ukraine publicly. Everybody should be showing up on the TV shows. Just create enough energy out in the public media to say this is completely wrong. Ukraine is starting to have to withdraw a little bit because they're running out of ammunition. And we have fought 2 world wars over the fact that we were not fully engaged in Europe. And
Right.
I wouldn't want to send my son who's in the army over there. So what's wrong with us? They're fighting our fight. They're fighting NATO's fight. So we have a whole series of issues that are coming that are casualties of the incompetence of the Republican Party up in Congress. But we need to yell, we need to yell loud, and we need to yell often. I will say, being a TikTok fan, that I live in a bubble on TikTok, and between you and all of the other creators, there's enough noise on TikTok about all of this.
Yeah.
And it comes out all the time. So, we have to use every media possible to get the word out.
Well, what people have to understand is that the Ukraine issue and us funding Ukraine isn't a political issue. It's a security issue for the entire world. Because if Russia goes in and takes Ukraine, they're not going to stop there. And next stop might be a NATO country. Now we've got all these countries, including the US, in this fucking mess. The point of trying to keep Russia out of Ukraine is to keep the world at peace. not to allow them to walk right through and start a world war. It's the thing about it is, I know Republicans know this, but their political expediency is more important than the security of this world, and that's troubling. That's that's fucking horrible.
It is beyond sad. There are less military people serving in Congress nowadays. And so, but on the Republican side, I don't know when they have become anti-military, but they're letting their performance artists over there override their sense of patriotism. So the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the rest of her ilk are driving their prerogatives and their agendas. And they have no sense of history because, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene, if she ever took a history class, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, she has no
But
shit.
she's in with like-minded bunch. They don't understand history. They don't understand national security. And I know they get the briefs, the intelligence briefs, and all. They can. I mean, they ought to be able to see the dangers inherent here. They ought to see that if Lithuania or any of the small Baltic states get pulled into any kind of confrontation, then all NATO goes and we go. And that is hoping that Trump doesn't get elected. Trump gets elected, we pull out of NATO. I think that's a possibility since they got a plan to get rid of most Democrats in government anyway.
Yeah.
But going back to Congress, it's a lack of patriotism. It's a lack of foresight. It's a lack of understanding national security and what's important. And they just keep beating up the people that are frankly standing on the front lines, telling them you need to do this if you want us to stay safe. If we don't want our sons and daughters, because now daughters are 40% of the military, to go over there and fight and die, then you need to do these things. And one of those would be supporting certainly Ukraine.
Well, one of the other issues that's going to hurt the Republicans come the election in November is what's going on in the House. You brought up Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House. In the period of time of this congressional session, they have really accomplished nothing. Now, in addition to that, they have a day like yesterday where they not only don't accomplish anything, but they embarrass themselves. They embarrass themselves by trying to impeach Mayorkas, the Homeland Security Secretary, with virtually no evidence, and nobody even knows why they want to impeach him, just to kind of strike back at Joe Biden. But they can't even get that passed. And then they come out with a standalone bill to fund Israel to try to supersede the bipartisan border bill, and that fucking fails. You alluded to the fact that Mike Johnson is a weak ass Speaker of the House. Never in my wildest dreams did I think we'd have a weaker speaker than Kevin McCarthy, but sure enough, we do.
I totally agree with you. I thought Kevin McCarthy was as bad as it could get until Mike Johnson shows up. He is just awful. And he doesn't have anybody else in leadership. He's listening to his performance artists all around him.
Right.
And so, MAGA Mike is going to go down in history in not a very positive light. If he survives even another week or two, frankly, I'd be surprised. But I think it's only because nobody else wants that job. I'll tell you, who would take that job would be what's her name from Marjorie Taylor Greene. She would take that job in a heartbeat. But they've got people who take it. They're just not competent, and they're worse than he is. And they won't. And there is a sizable portion of moderates in the House of Representatives in the GOP caucus that are, I think they're getting fed up. Some of them are retiring, but they're going to be associated with the least productive House of Representatives in modern history, going back maybe 200 years. So, I mean, you go to Congress to get changes done for your constituents, nothing's getting done at all.
Well, you said they're starting to get frustrated, and I'm reading that too, that members of the House, Republicans, are getting frustrated with this thing. You mean just now? You just realized things were fucked up? You've been there for, over a year in this session, and you're now just figuring out that it's fucked up. It just amazes me how I'm convinced. I've resigned myself to the fact that literally nothing is going to get done until after the 2024 November election. They just don't have the capacity. They're inept, they're incompetent, and they just don't have the right mindset. They're all about political expediency and not about getting anything done. And the sad thing is, no matter what they do, they fail. But even if they were successful, it wouldn't be enough to win the election. It's it's futile for them, and they can't grasp that.
Well, the problem is that almost all of them are gerrymandered in their states. So I don't, the makeup of the House of Representatives can change, but the gerrymandering since the last election has been ongoing and tough, and the rules have changed. And I think the Dems will probably pick up 30, maybe 40 folks this election. But the fact is, we need to control that entire Congress
Right.
and the presidency. And it all comes down to swing states. And so to win in those swing states, we have got to convince the independents that they need to support other side, because most independents tend to lean a little bit more conservative, but we need them to look at what's going on with the Republicans and go, I can't abide with that, and vote. And then we need Republicans that are moderates to just stay home. And then we have to get our base of young people out so that we can make the big strides and the wins that we'll need going from 2024 to the next election. They're incompetent, but it's going to be hard to replace some of them because it's so heavily gerrymandered, and the states are changing the rules, and they're saying legislatures have the right to determine elections and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know what kind of impact their incompetence would make, since they have so many red states,
I think I think in terms of the presidential election, the best thing could happen would be Donald Trump would be the nominee, because he would get destroyed, and that would put it to bed completely. However, I think the best scenario for the Democrats is Donald Trump gets dumped on his ass and he's not the nominee, because I really believe the people that are in the cult of Donald Trump, if he's not there, if he's not the nominee, then they just won't come out. And that will impact all the down ballot, the people voting for the legislature in the state and in the House and the Senate and governors and stuff. I think that's one reason why they're still embracing Donald Trump, in spite of the fact he's a huge fucking failure.
Well, I think you're right that his base might not come out, but at the same token, without that orange piece of crap running, I'm not so sure that our base will come out. Our base comes out because they don't like him. If it's a Nikki Haley, if she's the survivor, I don't know. I don't know that we could win the independents. I mean, to me, the best solution is for him to be totally damaged before, but still be their nominee and run against Biden. Biden's just not popular. And if Trump is not on that card and on the ticket for them, and they have Haley instead, I don't know that Biden beats Haley. She's
do you have any explanation for that? I mean, Joe Biden's been in office. He's had the Republicans pushing back against him the 3 years he's been in office, but the economy's good. The unemployment is good. He got a bunch of important things passed that Donald Trump said he would pass and never could. You know, as much as I don't like Joe Biden because of his age and because he's more of a centrist, he's not my favorite or top choice for president. You can't deny that he has done a good job, and he might have been the only person that could have made this transition, because Donald Trump put us in such a deep hole. We needed somebody with experience and who knew how to play the game. And there's no question. You can say whatever you want about Joe Biden. He knows how to play the game, and he consistently plays the fucking Republicans.
So Joe Biden has been a very good president. I mean, I will say he's been a very good president. He surprised me. My only issue with him is the Afghan withdrawal. Having said that, I don't think he's a strong campaigner. I think you put him up on the stage against young, attractive Nikki Haley, and it doesn't bode well for us, because the independents are looking will be looking at that contrast and I go, well, Trump's not up there. It'd be okay to vote for her. And then the young kids are already not a big fan of Biden because of his Israel policy, which
Do you really
they
think
haven't.
that's do you really think that's as big a deal? I mean, we sit and listen to all these messaging about
I
Joe
do.
Biden. I think it's coming out of the Republican side. They're throwing shit in the narrative. They do it all the time. And then they
Yeah,
say it catches fire. And I just don't see it.
I listen. I think Joe Biden's doing a masterful job in Israel.
Yeah.
Honest. I think the Israelis had were attacked. I think they should go after Hamas and go hard,
Yeah.
but they've done it in such a way that it's hard to be sympathetic, and we should be. But Hamas has to be destroyed. There's no doubt that if they do a pause, Hamas is just going to rebuild and go underground. And it's Hamas who's put the population between them and the Israeli military. It is not I mean, so what do people want them to do? They have to go after this terrorist organization, just like we have to go after the people who are attacking us in the Red Sea. But the fact remains that I think young people have never been giant fans. They voted for Biden because at that time social media was, look at what a danger. And we've had 4 years of Trump. So we got to see him. We got to see his incompetence, especially during the pandemic. So we had that. But voters seem to have no long-term memories. And I don't understand that. If you just stay on top of the issues, it's not particularly hard. This is about right and wrong, about what is in your best interest. And the Republicans have never been in the best interest of their voters, not ever. They just don't represent that. They represent the top 1%. That's it. And it shows every time they get a tax cut. It doesn't come to us. It goes to the top 1%. But their voters are, I'm just going to say it, be plain blunt. They're stupid. They're low information voters and they're stupid. So they put the rest of us in jeopardy. But we need young people to be smarter than that. Don't get tied around a single issue, but look at the whole totality of what the Biden administration has accomplished despite the odds against them, and about the noise and that comes up out of social media from the right. But it's just, he's old, he's doddering,
he's old and he's doddering. But here's the thing. I've talked to young people, and most young people don't say they care about the Israel thing because it's across the ocean and it really doesn't impact them. And frankly, most people in this country don't care about anything until it bites them in the ass. I like to boil things down into simple terms. And let me put it to you this way. Say you got a young millennial woman, okay? Young millennial woman, or a Gen Z woman for that matter, and you put up two issues: the way Joe Biden is handling Israel or overturning Roe v. Wade. Which one is more important to them? Which one are they going to vote based on?
That's the point. Women are probably going to come out, and because the abortion issue is their issue, they're going to come out. That's the one saving grace. Gen Z and millennial men, they're going to stay in their basements and play video games.
Yeah, but yeah, maybe, but keep in mind, we're talking about women and Roe v. Wade. That's 50% of the country, which is probably more than enough to win an election. But there are 70% of the people that support Roe v. Wade, 75%. And many of these people are married to or in relationships or parents with these women that will vote against it. I can't imagine those men that support their wives or significant others and Roe v. Wade to go the other way. I think we're looking at some people that are a little different than we were when we were young. Because I'll be honest with you, prior to Donald Trump, I knew about politics. I read about politics, but I wasn't nearly as engaged as I am now. Because what am I going to do about it? I think kids now, because of how much noise is in the media about politics, I think they're more engaged than we were. Not all, of course, but I think a lot of them are more engaged, and they're a pretty big voting bloc. I think I think you may be surprised by how much impact they have.
I'm hoping so. I think my only issue is with Nikki Haley is a well-spoken and sometimes not always smart speaker. And because she's a woman and because she talks in generalities about abortion and that we need to come together and that we need to take care of our women. And you know what? A 16-week ban is not so bad. Let's think about that. Or let's just leave it up to the states and we'll try to get the states to go. She can cloud the issue in a way that no white typical Republican male can. And that's my only fear. Because again, I've listened to her talk and I'm not completely sure that she's safe from the issue, but she'll certainly do a much better job on the issue than any of the Republican men that were running against Trump this
Well,
year.
let me put it to you this way. People do think she's more normal than Donald Trump, but fucking anybody's more normal than Donald Trump. She is a problem because she supported Donald Trump. She worked for Donald Trump. She's against abortion. She's got some racist tendencies. But let me put these two things to you. I don't think she'll be the nominee for three reasons. First of all, she's a woman and she's of immigrant parents and she's not completely white. That alone will probably exclude her from the Republicans making her a nominee. And then the other issue is I think she will get buried. She will go the way of all the other candidates before we even get close. I mean, we talked about this off the air. In Nevada, she was in the primary. She was the only name candidate. She got 32% of the vote, but the option to vote for none of these candidates got 62%. She was utterly embarrassed. And then when Super Tuesday comes up, or South Carolina, her home state, she may not be able to pull together the money to continue against Donald Trump.
Yeah, we talked about this. She's just holding on in the hopes that Trump gets sick and dies and leaves the stage because of his legal issues. And then if that happens, then she's just going to probably be awarded the nomination. But I tend to agree with you. She is not the kind of person that the people we've seen supporting Donald Trump, will even leave the comfort of their homes to go vote for all the reasons you just said.
Well, and do you think MAGA, the base, would actually ever vote for Nikki Haley? I just
No,
don't think they
I don't.
will. And if
No,
they
I
don't,
don't.
she's screwed.
Well, I already said that they're stupid.
Yeah.
And I know they get frustrated by those of us that look down on them. Well, we look down on you because you're stupid. And if you weren't stupid, but you're also racist. And so there's not a lot for you, MAGA, to for me to acknowledge in a positive way. When you're the ones that are on opioids, you're the one that's got one dentist in your county, and your healthcare system thing has just gone down. The hospital's closed, your prompt care is not there, and
Right.
yet continue to vote your values because the money is spent into it for you to vote your values rather than your needs. You're not being well represented by the party that you're voting for. And if you think that Donald Trump is going to make it, well, he didn't make a difference for me before. His only major accomplishment, frankly, was a tax cut. He screwed up the pandemic in every way. He said you guys didn't need to wear masks, so you died in droves in the states that you come from. You do stupid things like this truck convoy that's like 7 trucks down to the, you're stupid. And so no, I think if Trump is not the nominee, I think they don't come out to vote, and I certainly don't think they're going to come out to vote for Haley.
No.
If they're going to vote for a woman, they're going to vote for what's her name from, I think, Arkansas. There used to be the press secretary.
Oh,
They'll
that
vote for her.
dipshit. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll
I know
vote for
you.
her. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, and to be perfectly honest with you,
Yeah.
if Donald Trump isn't the nominee, the Democrats would do well if it's another Trump humping crazy bitch like her. Not somebody that
I
they
think
can't say she looks normal, like
Yeah,
Nikki
because to
Haley.
get elected, they have to say stupid stuff. They usually, you get a Mitt Romney, he tacks back to the middle after winning a primary. But you're
Right.
exactly right. You put another stupid fucker who won't tack back to the middle, they don't get elected. But they lose the popular vote. But the problem comes down to the swing states. And I'm never feeling good about the electoral college and the fact that we've got 6 states that can cost you or win you an election.
Yeah, that just goes to show you that the whole electoral college thing is antiquated.
Right.
It's not needed anymore. It doesn't make any sense. I guess there were reasons why they put it into play, but right now it's pretty much outdated and there's absolutely no need for it. I think if I had my druthers, I would hope that Donald Trump holds on as long as he can as the nominee. And I don't
So
think there's any quitting in Donald Trump unless he absolutely has to, keels over, goes to jail, whatever it is. But as long as he stays in the race, I still don't think that he'll end up being the nominee. And the longer they put all their money into Donald Trump, and then if all of a sudden he's gone a month out, then these fuckers have to scurry around and promote a new candidate and they won't have a fucking prayer.
I'm with you. I hope he holds on, and then his trials come up. And number one, he loses a lot of money, which he's going to lose a lot of money here soon. And I think we'll talk about the court cases here in a minute.
Yeah.
But then I hope he's found guilty just before the election. If they can find him guilty in like October of 24, how wonderful would that be? He holds on, he holds on, he holds on, and all of a sudden, the end of October, he's in jail. That would be, to me, that would be the best scenario.
Well, and that's the thing that the media does a disservice to the people who watch them. We keep hearing about these polls where Donald Trump is winning, which I don't believe,
I don't.
because we don't know who pays for those polls and who they're asking and what they're asking. But in these polls, there's a few places, few media outlets like Rachel Maddow or somebody who will say, yeah, even if that's true that Donald Trump is winning, there's another question that they ask that's never typically reported. And that question is, what if Donald Trump is convicted of a crime? Then that changes the whole scenario. That's a bridge too far for people. And Joe Biden would easily win at that point. Well, the idea that he's not going to be convicted of a crime between now and November is outrageous, because even if the DC thing doesn't happen as quickly as we want, we've got the Manhattan district that's going to jump right in there in March when they get that window of opportunity. Donald Trump will be convicted of something. I mean, he's not on a real hot win streak right now, so we can bet that's going to be the case. And if these polls are saying that's the game changer, and I presume it's going to happen, so this whole worrying about Donald Trump being ahead in the polls or whatever, I think it's just all pointless, because he can't run the table on these charges. He just can't.
I think him having to pay money, and he's the next case, Enron in New York is going to come out soon, I think. That's the beginning of his problems. The fact that he has to pay millions upon millions and millions of dollars, that's going to have an impact. And then the legal stuff, I think the RICO case comes up in Georgia in August, I believe.
Well,
And
yeah, I think so.
and I think the case with Jack Smith in Washington will come up probably later than March. But I don't think if the Supreme Court just allows it to go through and there is no presidential immunity, which they're going to come to that pretty easy.
Yeah.
I think Chutney, the
Chutkin.
judge, Chutkin, thank you. I think she's going to go quicker than she's not going to wait till August. I think she'll slot him in, maybe May, June, later than she was. But the case is only going to take a few months. We'll never see the one in Florida unless they get rid of the judge down there.
Well, we can talk about that after the break too, because I have some thoughts about the Florida thing. But yeah, Judge Chutkin, when they finally get the announcement from Supreme Court, and I think what the Supreme Court's going to say is, yeah, we don't want any part of that. We don't want to deal with that ridiculous, frivolous thing we got kind of a hornet's nest going with the 14th Amendment. We're a little busy. So the appellate court did a good job with their decision. Let's just go
Good
with that.
job.
I think that's going to happen. But the
They did
one
a great job.
thing I think a lot of people, and maybe even I thought this, that once that came down from the Supreme Court, it was going to be March 4th. So maybe it would be the end of March. But the way it was explained to me is that when this appeal was filed for in December, that put everything on hold for a
That's
couple of
right.
months. So now when it's off hold, they're going to need a couple of months to make up for the 2 months they lost. So that puts us in mid or late May, probably, which is
Right.
still
That's right.
plenty of time to get this fucking thing done.
That's right. I heard the same thing. She wanted to give them, I want to say 7 months to both the prosecution and the defense to put their cases together. And when everything went on hold, that doesn't count towards the 7 months. So
Right.
I think, right, but let's face it, if it's May, 4 month case, maybe, to get it all done. We're in now in September, October, and right where I kind of
That
wanted to
would be
be.
nice. I think Jack said it would be 2 to 3 months because it's not a very complex case. I think
No,
Jack Smith made a point of making it a non-complex case because he's sensitive to the time sensitivity. We haven't seen any of the other people that will ultimately get indicted for this insurrection. Donald Trump is the top of the pyramid, but there's a lot of other people. But he's been
oh,
very
sure.
careful not to include anybody yet because he doesn't want to confuse the situation or slow it down.
They're coming. They're coming.
Oh, they're
They're
coming.
coming.
They're coming.
Senators and persons. Yep.
Well,
Yeah. I'm with you on this.
do you think that Jack Smith will wait until the trial started before he indicts sitting members of Congress or until after the case is over?
I think he's going to have to wait till after the case is completed or towards the end of the case when he's pretty confident of the way he prosecuted the case. I don't, I think he's got all the ammunition and the material being looked at. I think he's got investigators putting it together. But if you look at how long it's taken to get the actual people who were involved in the uprising, that happened a few years ago, and they're still prosecuting people. So there's a long pipeline. He doesn't have to be in any hurry.
Yeah.
If they lose their elections and they're not in Congress, even better. 2004, Marjorie Taylor Greene and some of the senators that were involved in this are no longer there, or even if they are there, I think their turn's going to come. And I'm fine with that. If they take Trump down, I'm fine with that. But I do think they have to go out after the enablers, because the enablers are the ones who allowed this to happen, and they were part of the process to stymie the certification of the vote.
I agree with you on that. But does Jack Smith then, as he gets closer to the date where he's going to prosecute Donald Trump, does he start knocking on doors before the trial to the Jim Jordans, to the
Oh,
Marjorie Taylor Greenes, to try to get them to flip on Donald Trump? I don't know that he even needs that, but that may be the leverage he needs to get those fuckers talking.
I don't think he has a. I don't think he has a chance at this very moment to get them to flip. To be honest, I think that being representatives in Congress, that I don't think he's going to. I personally don't think he's going to show them any mercy and leniency just to get them to flip. I think he has enough information with everybody else that was involved in the conspiracy. He doesn't need them. They were small bit players. They were players, but they were bit players. So
Well,
I think collecting evidence, I think each one of them is going to have their own individual case.
and I think Jack
That's
Smith has an ace up his sleeve too. And that
I
ace
hope
up
you're right.
his, well, he does. He definitely does because he has Mark Meadows flipped. And who
Yep.
better to throw Donald Trump under the buses than his right-hand man? With Mark Meadows on the table, he probably doesn't need them. And I think you're right. He's not going to show any mercy. Mark Meadows not only can implicate Donald Trump because of the communications between him and Donald Trump, but anybody that wanted to communicate with Donald Trump I had to go through Mark Meadows. So if Mark Meadows has turned over everything, he's fucking up Donald Trump, but he's also fucking up all these sitting members of Congress. He doesn't need them to flip, given that Mark Meadows already has.
That's exactly my point. Is I just think that for him, they violated a special trust that they were required that they had as representatives. And I just don't. It doesn't. It sounds like Jack Smith is a stone cold killer. He's not going to let them get away with it. He needs to be able to prove that everybody's equal under the law. And if you're going to go after the peasants that were in the insurrection, that were actually walking into the building, all those little low-lying players who showed up, well, then I do think in order to be fair, he's got to go after the bigger players. And that will set an example that will shine throughout history, to be honest with you. I don't think that'll happen again. Well,
No.
Donald Trump once in a
Yeah.
he's a once in a historical lifetime kind of guy anyway.
He's like 100-year storm, hopefully.
Yeah.
I tell you what, Tony, let's take a quick break, and we will be, if I can figure out how to do this, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
I'm good. I'm good. This is going great. You enjoying this?
Hold
You all
on a
right?
second. Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm trying to get this to work properly. I got a problem. Yeah, let's just take the break. Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take your time. Take your time. I've got.
We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We have the good fortune of having listener Tony with us. Compelling conversation. There's a lot of things going on in this country as we're in the political season. And Tony, I wanted to talk about the elephant in the room, the big thing that's happening today. And that, of course, is the oral arguments in front of the Supreme Court regarding the Colorado Supreme Court's decision to take Donald Trump off the ballot. Now, a lot of people are going back and forth trying to figure out what the Supreme Court will do. Nobody really knows. We know what they should do, but we also know the Supreme Court is a little less than credible these days. What are your thoughts about that? We're going to get the oral arguments, and then we'll get a decision at some point later. How do you think this is all going to play out?
Just like you, I follow a lot of media, and every media outlet has a legal analyst. So they've all said the same thing. They've all said the Supreme Court members claim to be originalists and to follow the original intent of the Constitution. And based on that, they should find that Donald J. Trump was committed an insurrection and is not eligible to be a candidate for the office of presidency. That's what they say. And then they all say the same thing, all of them, which is this Supreme Court will try to find a way not to come up with that judgment. And then they all had theories on how they could do it. So I think that Judge Thomas, Judge Alito probably got some phone calls from some of their sponsors. And they were kind of given some instructions on, we need to kind of keep Trump as our candidate. He's going to get us our tax cuts and less regulation. He's too stupid to fill the office. We can manipulate him. So I just don't see the Supreme Court, this particular Supreme Court, doing the right thing, which should be to keep him off the ballot, because they have to declare him to be an insurrectionist. And I don't think that they are in the position right now, or want to be in a position to make that declaration.
Yeah. I mean, they were sure fine to do it with Bush v. Gore and decide the election that year because the Republican was on the winning side of it. There's no way Donald Trump can be on the winning side of this. Now, one of the loopholes somebody was talking about, and I have to admit, it sounds like a loophole. The 14th Amendment doesn't say keep him off the ballot. The 14th Amendment says he can't hold office.
That's correct.
And since we're only in the primary, I could see them pushing it down the road a little bit, saying, well, he's not even the candidate yet. So let's deal with that when we find out he's the candidate. So assuming he gets the nomination, then we can revisit this. I can see them doing something like that because that's nothing
Absolutely.
but a bullshit loophole.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you on that. And in fact, that sounds exactly what I think they're going to do. And in fact, I take it a little further. He can get elected, and then a push could be made to declare him unable or fit for the office. And maybe he serves, a few months before it comes back in. They can delay this as long as they need to for a first year or 2 years in office. I just don't see them. I just don't see them keeping him, making the right decision. They're already held in low self-esteem. I personally don't think they care. I don't think. Well, I know Judge Thomas is not going to recuse himself, though
No,
historian and other people have said, "Hey, you can't be in part of this decision because your wife was a giant supporter and part of January 6th." But I just don't see it. I don't have the faith and confidence. This is a corrupt Supreme Court. It's been a corrupt Supreme Court for a long time. There's a reason why people now almost despise the Supreme Court as much as they despise Congress. It's ineffective. It's corrupt. Thomas, in particularly, has done more to ruin the reputation of the Supreme Court, and I don't understand why they just don't ask him to resign quietly. Judge Roberts is not doing himself any favors by keeping Judge Thomas there.
no, definitely not. Well, let's take a look at the other side. Say they do the job they are sent there to do, and they find in favor of the Colorado Supreme Court, and Donald Trump has to be taken off the ballot. Let's just say that happens. That changes the whole terrain for what's to come in the next 9 to 10 months. It changes it in a way that nobody ever really thought of because nobody thinks the Supreme Court's going to do that. The Republicans think they can hold on. I'm willing to bet if the Supreme Court decides he can't be on the ballot, can't hold office, that there's a big sigh of relief with the Republican Party because they know he's a loser. They know he's not going to
Well,
help them win.
yeah, now would be the time to get rid of him before it goes too much further down the road. No, I agree, but that would be your moderate Republicans. That wouldn't be your MAGA Republicans. That would. Um, I also think that, let's say they declare he's an insurrectionist and can't hold office. I think the states are going to, the southern states are just going to, and the MAGA states are just going to say, oh, we're not going to listen to you. They're already in the process of not listening to the Supreme Court anyway. So Texas and Florida and a bunch of the others will just say, we don't care what you say. He's our guy. We're going to run him.
Well,
Now,
they
will
can
he win? No, because
no.
Pennsylvania will throw him out. Maybe Arizona, maybe Wisconsin has a shot at throwing him out. So he can't win because there'll be enough states that won't allow him to run. But there'll be a lot of states that will allow him to, I think, in violation of what the Supreme Court says.
Well, and that's the other thing. You talked about Texas and the whole razor wire and the Supreme Court, and they're saying fuck the Supreme Court. If you can just say fuck the Supreme Court, what's the point of having a Supreme Court? I mean,
Exactly.
they have enough trouble with credibility and legitimacy
Yeah.
already, and their own people, the Republicans themselves, are the one that are diminishing any power that the Supreme Court had, and they should take that as a red flag. Because if Donald Trump comes in and he wants to be a dictator, there's no point in having a Supreme Court because he'll just make all the decisions.
No, you're exactly right, and it's their it's their own party that is, you use the word diminishing, but I would say destroying. Um,
Absolutely.
and so then what? Will the Supreme Court now hold a governor in contempt? I don't think so. And if they do hold him in contempt, will they send federal officers to arrest him for a trial? And have the Justice Department? I don't know. I don't know. I think that the GOP, particularly in the States, has set up a situation where the dynamic can lead to maybe not a civil war. Civil war is too harsh a word, but certainly to violence. And they're doing it to themselves and they're doing it to the country. And they're violating against the norms and that have dictated the way this country's been run forever. So, I don't know what could happen. And I think the Supreme Court is very sensitive to that. If they keep him off, it leads to violence and to them being diminished. If they keep him on, I mean, then he's diminished by us, on the left.
Right.
And they don't really give a shit about what we do. So that's why I really just don't think I think they're going to find a way to either delay, like as you said, or better yet, just end this case now and find a way not to leave him on and just get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the most disappointing things we've realized since Donald Trump has been president, that as much as there have been norms in government, in the presidency, in the judicial system, we're finding out now when you get an incorrigible child who doesn't think in terms of norms, doesn't feel restricted by norms, that our judicial system and our government have no fucking teeth. You're subpoenaed by Congress. Now, prior to 2016, if you got a subpoena from Congress, did you think you have an option? No.
No,
But a lot of
no.
people did have options, the people that have a little bit of power. I just think this country's been exposed for being weaker, at least legally, than we ever imagined. And that's thanks to Donald Trump because he doesn't follow norms.
I believe there's a subpoena from Congress, maybe the Senate, for Greg Abbott to appear about this razor wire and activating his guard unit down there. He's just ignoring it. I mean, I don't care. He's just like he's going to ignore the Supreme Court, and the country is in a lot of trouble. And we're not going to get any better unless the voters get smarter. And I don't see the voters getting any smarter. If anything, it seems like they are tearing apart the educational system to keep the voters docile and stupid.
Yeah.
Ripe for influencing through bad facts and propaganda. It just seems like, I mean, I'm not a conspiracy guy, but it seems like there's a grand conspiracy on the right to destroy all these institutions to keep the population where they want it to be.
No, I don't disagree. And, I get frustrated too sometimes when I look at what's going on and I'm almost of the opinion. I'm 63 years old. My life isn't going to change much between now and the time I die. I'm pretty well set up and it's going to be what it is. If Donald Trump is reelected and this dictatorship or this authoritarianism is put into place, it's hard to feel sorry for the young people of this country. You got what you asked for. Now you're going to have to deal with it. And now you're going to have to learn a lesson, a hard lesson. At that point, you and I can do what we can do by doing the podcast or doing TikToks. We're limited. We're not powerful people, but we make enough noise and enough people make enough noise. If they're not willing to listen or react to obvious things, there's not much we can do.
Well, you're 63. I'm going to be 69 in July, and I'm very comfortable in my life, and I will just pull in my head and keep a low profile if that's the case. If things go bad, it's not going to affect me. I mean, right now, stocks are doing well. Well, the reason they're doing well is because after the pandemic, the small number of corporations that control everything raised their prices, and they figured, okay, when they start screaming, we'll slow it down, but we'll blame it on supply chain issues, and we'll use our people in Congress to say the same thing. But at the same time, for those of us that have some investments in the market, we're doing very well. Well, yeah, they're profitable, but they're profitable on the backs of the American people who have to pay much higher prices. It's all kind of tied together into one big mess that a lot of other countries particularly some of those in Scandinavia, Europe, they don't go through this. They don't allow the kind of greed that we allow here, you know, and we have a lot to learn from certain European countries. And I don't think we're going to get there. There's we're divided in half, and one half is just too stupid to see the forest. You know, they can't. They can't even see the mountain in the forest because they're too blinded by the small trees that are around the mountain. And it's their fault for not being as educated in what's going on as it is anything else. It doesn't take much to read a bunch of stuff. It doesn't take much to listen and keep your ears open and get out of your bubble. It doesn't take much to go, well, there's a difference between values that I'm getting angry about and my own financial needs that I actually have to have. And so, you know, I don't think we're doing horrible, but we'd certainly do much better if for 20 years the Democratic Party was voted in until the Democratic Party got too full of itself that it had to be taken down. And if the Republican Party went away, because they don't represent workers and their citizens. They just don't. And why the unions would ever concede and go ahead and back anybody on the Republican side, I'll never understand. Down here in the South, you don't have unions because it's right to work stuff. They were all destroyed. I've heard that down in, I want to say Alabama, people working at a Toyota plant are still having to go on Medicaid because the Toyota plant doesn't pay enough because it's a non-union plant.
Right. Right.
That's a shame. It's all tied together. All the corruption from Thomas on down, and it all comes from the right, and it's a shame.
Well, and that's kind of where I see we're headed. I think we're at a real pivotal point in this country. I think the tide has turned and shifted the right way. Republicans are constantly losing at everything they try. They can't make a good choice. They can't execute anything properly. And if I'm right, in November and we get a blue wave, I think that's the moment in time when the people in the Republican Party will step away from the whole authoritarian and MAGA bullshit. I mean, no matter how bad they lose, like in 2022 or whatever else we've seen them go through, they still stick to their guns. But if there's a blue wave in 2024 and they lose the House and the Senate and they lose the presidency and it's all Democratic, for all intents and purposes, the Republican Party as we know them now is done. They have no choice but to regroup and reimagine their situation. And in order to do that, it's going to take some time. They can't flip it in 2 years and say, okay, now we're these guys. So we might very well be looking at a period of 10 years, 15 years that the Republican Party is not even an issue. And I don't even think that's a great thing because now we've got Democrats with nobody pushing them. And the
Well,
Democrats,
no, I'm with you. Listen, I agree with you on the federal level. The problem is the state level is still going to be very tribal, and the state level makes a lot of noise that gets out there and riles up voters, and so they don't want to leave their tribes. And you know, voters on both sides never like to say, "Well, I made a mistake here." They just
no, they'll
don't.
never do that.
Stay with their tribe. It's like you stay with your favorite football team. You know, and so it's got to be more than the federal level. The federal level can accomplish much. Unlike you, I'm not so sure we'll hold the Senate, but I do think that we'll capture a large number of seats. Because when I talked about gerrymandering earlier, well, the blue states have been gerrymandering the crap out of themselves too. So every gerrymandered seat in North Carolina, a seat's been added and gerrymandered in New York. So
Right.
I think we have a good chance of picking up quite a few seats in the House of Representatives, but I'm not positive that we'll hold the Senate. And that doesn't change anything, particularly
No.
doesn't change anything at the states level. And the states are also gerrymandered so that, you know, Democrats can't win their own local representatives. I see it here when you look at the districts for the legislatures in South Carolina, Democrats don't stand a chance. So, you know, until that is broken, yeah, until we can elect blue all the way down to the state level, I think it's going to be just fractious and noisy constantly. But you know, on the other hand, we got a lot of weapons on our side. I mean, we got
Yeah.
Taylor Swift, we got
Taylor Swift.
we got
Yeah.
our favorite boomer, we've got a lot of weapons. We got almost every
Yeah.
comedian out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
got a lot of them.
Taylor Swift and I are about at peer level,
That's
pulling power.
that's exactly right. You both have a giant impact on the culture.
Well, aren't you at all buoyed by the fact, when you're talking about a state level, all these abortion things in all these states, when they finally put it on the ballot, these red states vote against uh, making abortion illegal. And
Sure, one issue.
that's what I've always said. If nothing else is happening, that one issue is the one that's going to sink the Republican Party because it affects
I
half
hope
the
so.
country.
But it doesn't. So the thing is, it does sink that issue when it comes up on the ballot, and the issue generally wins on the ballot. But then it's like then they still vote for their regular GOP legislator. So yeah, they go no to 6-week abortions, but yes to GOP Representative James Smith. You know,
Well,
it's a weird thing. You know, they just people don't leave their tribes. But on a single issue, yeah, that's great. Now, if we can turn all those women into progressives, now that would be awesome. But I just don't see it. It's they're taking care of that one issue, and I'm proud of the fact that they are taking care of that one issue. And if we do control the federal, maybe we get a federal law that stands the test of time. But when it comes down to what we need to happen to really make this country a little bit more like what goes on in Europe, I just don't see it. So you're still kind of on your own. You still have to, amass a certain amount of wealth to keep yourself and your family comfortable. You still have to. The thing that is letting me down is the education system is not as robust as it used to be, and it's because it's been sabotaged across the country, particularly in those places we've been talking about.
right. Well, like I said before, in this country, we've always been apathetic. And one of the reasons we're in the position we are in now is because of the apathy that was rampant in this country for 100 years. But I've always said that once somebody gets bit in the ass, then they get radical about what they want. And I think that abortion issue does bite some people in the ass, young people, especially women who see it as a constitutional right taken away from them. Um, the Republicans, let me put it to you this way. If we're talking about Donald Trump, take a look at what he did in 2020 to now in 2024, and what have the Republicans in Congress done in 2022. They lost on both situations. Donald Trump lost by 7 million votes and I don't know how many electoral votes. The simple question, if you boil it down to one thing, is what has Donald Trump done to improve his lot from 2020 to 2024? And there is nothing. Anything he's done has hurt him in terms of support. So that's why I can't see why there's even any question whether or not he can win. And same with same with the Congress. They took a whooping in 2022. What have they done to fix it? Well, they've done nothing, and they've embarrassed themselves. So why would we even think that there is a chance that they would do better than they did in 2022 or Donald did in 2020?
Yeah, everything I was just talking about was really about individual states. On the federal level, MAGA is loathed. It's loathed by women in general, but particularly suburban women. Their standard bearer is loathed, really loathed by independents and by women. I mean, women hate him. They look at him and they go, "Wow, he's disgusting," and so you're right. I think on the federal level, the problem is on the state level, we need to win senators. We'll get the House and we'll get the presidency, but we need to keep control of the Senate as well. And on that, I am not at all sure or even positive that we'll keep the Senate. And I don't understand. But if you're right, if the women come out to vote because they're disgusted and they loathe Trump, and they do that across the country, then maybe we have a chance of repeating what happened in Georgia in 2020.
Yeah,
We get blue
absolutely.
Senate.
I think it might even be better than that. The thing is that when people look at problems, and I've tried to explain this to my kids, and I try to explain it in the TikToks too. When you look at our country right now, we got a lot of problems. We got the federal government, we've got the state government, we've got a lot of things we need to fix. And there is no situation where we can fix it all at once. It becomes overwhelming, seems insurmountable. So what you have to do is fix the worst thing first and then work down the road. The fact of the matter is, if Donald Trump is an elected president and we maintain the House or gain the House and maintain the Senate, it's not over. There's a lot of work from digging out of this hole. So we focus on the biggest fire first. We get that past us, and then once we do that, and we start to be able to do some good things that create goodwill, then we worry about the state. If we try to do it all at once, it's not going to work. We're going to fail completely. So we've got to get the smaller wins or the biggest wins before we can get to an ultimate resolution to all of our problems. They're just too vast.
Yeah, the problem is going to be Trump goes down to defeat, MAGA goes down to defeat. All well and good. I think we go back to the cycle of 2 years later, we lose the House of Representatives again. We'll have Biden for those 2 years, and maybe he dies and Kamala Harris takes over. Well, if she takes over, we're definitely going to lose the House 2 years later. And nothing against her. I think she'd be a great president.
I think she'd be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, she's qualified. But I think that riles up the other tribe 2 years later. And unfortunately, our tribe doesn't come out in the midterms. So it's, we go back to that kind of cycle. You accomplish a couple things, you got 2 years to do it, and then all of a sudden it changes hands and you can't get shit done.
Well, yeah. And I'll just say this. I've heard people say that to me before. And I think where you're missing there is that you're looking on a historical perspective. You're looking at what typically happens, but nothing typical is happening now. It's a new world. It's a brand new world. And if Joe Biden's smart, once he wins the presidency, he goes on a fucking tear, passing everything he can. And then when all that stuff comes to the people, I don't think they're going to have as easy a time of taking back the House when people are feeling good and things are going well and Donald Trump's out of the narrative, out of the equation. I think Joe Biden has an opportunity once he becomes president again and gets support from the House and the Senate to do a lot of shit. And it's going to be hard to get people to say, I hate this guy because he's done so much good. I mean, we're looking
I hope so. I hope so. But let's face it, he is not Eisenhower, even though he has as many accomplishments as Eisenhower. He's just, he's done a great job, but he hasn't gotten the credit that he deserves. People are going to vote this election, not for Joe Biden. The independents and the women are going to vote against Donald Trump.
Right. And that's fine. And that's fine. That's what they did in 2020. They voted against Donald Trump.
Right. And that's all good. That gets us 2 years.
But don't you think the culture in the Democratic Party is going to change as soon as Joe Biden wins? And I'll tell you why I think that. Because all of a sudden, the Speaker of the House is going to be Hakeem Jeffries. And he's a much different man than we've seen in the Speaker of the House. Yeah, I see him as Obama with a fucking stick, because he's going to fight. Yes. He's the right man to have in the House of Representatives as the Speaker going on for the next 2 years, because he'll get some things done. He'll put some Republicans in their place. I mean, they're already doing that to a certain extent. I think there's a lot of things that will change when Joe Biden is reelected that don't have anything directly to do with Joe Biden. I just think we're on the right track, and I almost see it as destiny. We've gone through this shitty time. Now it's time to be done. You know as well as I do. We've all gone in our lives, long lives living in this country. We've gone through some incredibly shitty times, like the 60s. I think that was probably the worst time in the history, but you know what? We saw our way out of that and things got better. I think we've had our run of bad shit in this country, and then the natural process was we will come out the other side, and then maybe down the road, but there'll be another period, another fight for younger people to deal with. But I really sense that's the way it's going to go. It's always been that way. And I think it's happening now, and we can see it with the constant failures of the Republican Party.
Well, I love your positivity. I'm not quite with that. I do think that Gen Z and millennials will make a difference if they stay true to their progressive outlooks, and if they go out and vote over a long period of time, they can change the country. They just have to realize it. But I know a lot of them, locally. I haven't been I'm still a teacher, and they're good. They're good kids. And there's a lot of them that are, and we see them online, that are politically active, but there's a lot more who just don't have a clue. And Gen Z is better than the millennials, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they stay engaged, that they stay smart. The best thing that this country can do is to make college education cheap, because we will produce a generation of smarter, more intelligent citizens that will later can get us to Mars, for example, and make world peace, and get us healthcare for everybody, and on and on and on. But they need to vote. They need to get out, and they need to say, we are the generation that's going to finally end this recurring cycle of good, bad, good, bad, good, bad every couple of years. We need them to stay true to their values and continue to push forward. If they do that, then I'm with you. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that that's what happens.
Well, here's the situation as far as the voters. 2024, millennials and Gen Zs will have a huge impact on the election. By 2028, millennials and Gen Zs will be the biggest voting bloc. The transition from the boomers and even the Gen X um, will be going by the wayside. We'll be fading out, dying, retiring, whatever the fuck we do. So the young people by 2028 are in a position to change everything. I personally think there are a few things. There are three things that our Congress has to do to save this country. First of all, first thing they have to do, they have to get off their ass, unlike what the Democrats did in the past, and codify Roe v. Wade. They got to do that to make sure there's never any trouble with that again. Secondly, they've got to somehow make medical care affordable or free or whatever it is. And the last thing is the one that I'll get the biggest argument with, but you have to understand where I'm coming from this. Our educational system is a crisis in this country. And what does the US government do when there's a crisis? They pour money into it to get things back to normal. I think we are in a crisis position with education. I think the future children and their education are what's going to save us or sink us. And because it is a crisis situation, at least for a period of time, they should make all education free. Not because I'm trying to give somebody a free ride, not because I'm going to gain anything from it, but we need more people educated. And if they can't afford to get in, they aren't going in. If they don't feel like they want to do it, they may want to do it when that opportunity is there. I think it's a crucial situation. And if we don't educate the young people in this country, that's where we're fucked. I agree with you 100%.
I am so agreeing with you on all three of those points. My son is an English teacher at a local high school. what he says about the state of the students, now granted, where he teaches is kind of Appalachia around
Yeah.
here. We call it the Valley. But what he says about the children is you have a tiny percentage that are going to be eligible and do well in college. And you got the vast majority that just don't care. And he has to deal with that every single day. And I think he's got the toughest subject to teach, which is English. These kids don't want to learn how to read and comprehend what they're doing, or even put pen to paper or type on a computer or a laptop or even on their phones and use and communicate in a legible way. And so I'm with you. Something needs to be changed. Um, our teachers need to be paid well. They need to be professional. I personally think we need strong teachers unions across the country. And I think education needs to be free for those that want to go to college like me. I went on federal grants and state grants, and my college was free. And there was enough money to even pay for my books back in the day.
Right.
But I wasn't, putting a massive amount of debt like we have right now. These kids come out of college as a psychologist with a psychology major, and they're handicapped with $70,000 worth of debt, and they have a bachelor's. They're not going to be able to pay that back. It's a scam.
Well, yeah, it is a scam, and that's what I tell all older people who come to me and say, "Why should they have a free ride? I had to pay for my education. I had to pay for my education." But here's the deal: you got to look beyond the end of your nose. You can't take an entire generation or generations, put them through school, and then, like you say, saddle them with $70,000 of debt and expect them to qualify or afford houses or cars. And when a whole generation can't buy houses or cars, the economy fucking crashes. I've told one guy, he said to me, yeah, I'm not going to sign up for that extra money for the school district because my kids are gone. I said, okay, you're gone, but how old, you're 60 now. I said, what are you going to do with your house? Well, I'm going to sell it. I own it outright and it's part of my retirement. Okay. Well, if your school district sucks, nobody's going to want to buy your house. So your investment in your future is going to be worth half as much as it is now. You cool with that? Would you rather pay the extra $200 a year, or would you rather just sink yourself? And unfortunately, people can't grasp that.
Well, they can't grasp that the more educated, the higher their salaries and their pay, and the more they're paying into the Social Security system, which pays directly for that old person's Social Security.
Right.
I mean, you get a bunch of people that are working, I don't know, picking up dead animals off the road at minimum wage. They're not paying much in Social Security. And so, it's all tied together. Like I said before, it's all tied together. And if we're not helping our young people, we're not building the next strong cohort of citizens that will replace us, that will keep this country moving ahead as a modern, powerful country. We are. It almost looks like we've turned into a third world country, and it's a shame because we have lots of opportunities, but most of our kids can't afford them. And you go down to the states that take more than they give, they give less to their own state citizens, but you go up to places like New York, they have programs for everybody, and yeah, you pay more in taxes, but you're getting more out of it, and you're creating a group of people that are just more educated, that are going to contribute, to your society. And by not doing that, we're again, just like everything else, we're voting against our own interests.
Absolutely. And the thing I don't understand, it's greed when we come to wealthy people or the elites in Congress and stuff. But the fact of the matter is, the middle class is the backbone of this country, pretty much carries this country. And if you continue depleting them of money and any kind of success, eventually it's going to cave in on itself, because then the government and the rich people aren't going to have anybody to grift off of, because we'll be broken. They're setting themselves up for their own demise. and they can't grasp that. I've always made it this way. You have a dog, right?
You have two little chihuahuas. Yes.
I've always pointed it out this way. It's like taking a dog and putting a bowl of food down next to him. They chomp all that stuff up. Then you put another bowl of food, they'll chomp. They'll fucking eat that shit till they explode. And that's what the wealthy and the government are doing. They're going to the well and going to the well until it's dry, and then they'll stand there and go, "What the fuck happened?"
Yeah,
They
yeah.
don't
But you know,
grasp that.
the wealthy who own corporations and work for corporations and get stock from corporations, they don't care because they're insulated. They live in their mansions and they're insulated. They can jump on any one of three yachts that they own and they're insulated. You
But
know, and it's
don't
a shame.
don't you think, if you're talking about the free market, if you get to the point where colleges are so expensive that nobody goes, and right now I'm convinced colleges are going out of style because they are so expensive. You go there
Oh,
and you
yeah,
get in debt $70,000 so you can get a $30,000 a year job, which makes no financial sense. But nowadays, there's other ways to get jobs. My son has his college degree, but where he's going to get his job is by taking certifications online for a lot less
absolutely,
money. And that's
absolutely.
I talked about with this with my wife. We were going to put money away for my granddaughter for college when she gets older. And I asked the financial guy, I said, "What happens if she decides not to go to college?" "Well, that's the only way you can get the money." I said, "You're locking my money up where she has to go to college because she's 3. I don't know what the situation with college is going to be 17 years from now.
That's right. That's
We
right.
don't know if college will even be a thing. It could be a whole different thing. And then you're going to say, well, it's not college, so we're keeping your money." Fuck that. I ain't doing that.
Oh, I mean, the colleges want, they've gotten to be greedy institutions. They've put a lot of their courses online so they don't have to pay professors, and when they do pay professors, they don't pay them very well. But they'll put a lot of alumni money into, sporting facilities. It's the sporting facilities that I'm wearing my Clemson thing, so
Yeah.
I get it. No, it's the sporting facilities that say, I want to go to Clemson as a student. Look at what they have with their massive gym and a great football team and all the rest of it. But little by little, people are starting to get the cost and the value of things. And education is a thing. And if the cost is not that is too much per the value that it gives, they're going to do what you did and look at certifications and say, well, I can go to Microsoft and get these 3 certifications and get a job with Microsoft or Apple or just work as an independent contractor, and I'd be better off than being saddled with that. The companies have gotten exceedingly greedy. I read 2 days ago that some McDonald's franchise charged $19 for a Big Mac meal someplace. Yeah,
Yeah.
now, you can't go to Olive Garden for 2 for less than $60, $70. These companies and their greed is slowly, people are starting to say, I'll stay home and make a sandwich. And that's what I'm doing. We don't eat out as much, and I do pretty well, but I can't see paying $80 for a meal at Olive Garden. It's just ridiculous. And that's how I think college people going to college are saying, I'd rather stay in my state school that's local. Here in Aiken, where I live, there is a state school, USC Aiken. So it's a campus of USC, University of South Carolina, up in Columbia. It's like $6,000 per year. It
Yeah.
is one of the best. You can go there. You can get out with a bachelor's in engineering. It's got a great nursing program. You'll work. If you want to be a nurse, you're going to work. My son went there and it's got a great educational department. $6,000. He owes nothing for his education. 4 years of education with help from the state before he married his mom. He hasn't paid a dime towards his education, and he got out, and he graduated within 30 days. He had a teaching job. Now, does it pay great? No, but it pays 40,000 for a guy that's 24, 25 years old, 40,000, and
It's a
lives home.
starting point. Yeah.
It's a great place. I'm trying to talk him into getting his master's and his doctorate so that he can make that amount, get up. And then maybe, a few years down the road, when he gets to be a little bit smarter, maybe think about becoming an assistant principal and then a principal, where they're making here in Aiken, they're making, well over, they make over six figures. So,
Right.
and they're getting paid as they should. And frankly, for Southern school district, they pay pretty decently here.
Well,
So,
don't you think that comes to a point where they're pricing themselves out, whether it be McDonald's or a university, where people just can't afford it and they start losing business, and then they've got to adjust at that point, or it's too late and they fucking shut the doors. I mean, everybody talks about the free market. If people can't afford what you're selling, you're out of fucking business.
well, right now, people's 401ks are doing great, but you hit the right word, which is adjustment. In the near future, I believe the companies are going to have to make that adjustment. Their prices are too high, and people are starting to say, "Oh, screw it! I'm not going to McDonald's. I'm not going to go to Home Depot. I'm not going to do this repair on my house." And they're going to make an adjustment, so our stock prices are not going to be as soaring as they are right now. But and I hope, and again, it ties together. But corporate greed. Um, you know, and no resolution of the corporate greed by our representatives in Congress has put us in a situation where, we are not the greatest country in the world by a long shot. We
No,
are not the happiest people in the world. You look at the citizens in a lot of other places, they're happy. They pay
yeah.
high taxes, but we're paying exactly, if not more than they are in terms of fees and inflation and for healthcare. And you add that all up, we're paying more than they are in their high taxes, where all that stuff is provided as part of being a citizen for that country.
That's
And
that's
until
that's what I was
I was
talking
going
to
to
my
say,
wife about. We're going to fly into Orlando. We're going to go to Georgia. We got to drive from Orlando to Savannah because there isn't a direct flight. And people always tell me I'm going to Florida because there's no state tax. Yeah, but there's toll fucking booths everywhere you go down there, and there's all
there is
kinds of
no,
other fees. Don't think you're getting any kind of break just because they're not charging you sales tax or state tax, because they get you one way or another. They just
they
make it
get you on
look
your
better.
property. They
What's
get you
that?
on your property. In Florida, they
Yeah.
get you on your property and they get you on your insurance. And you're going up through Orlando. I just was recently in Orlando, and there's construction going on down there. And the construction sent me into a toll road, and I just got to, I just got to, and of course, I had no cash to pay anything. Who carries, I don't have a transponder or anything. So I got a ticket in the mail, but it was only $4, thank God. So, you just, you want to move to Texas, it's the same kind of deal. But we need to get to the point where we have our representatives tackling the problems of our country. And unfortunately, our representatives currently in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, to be honest, have not been able to accomplish very much for their citizens on any major issue, be it healthcare, the price of goods, the fake inflation, which is not really inflation caused by, the pandemic, but is inflation caused by greed. And that's what they're sent there for. Instead, they've concentrated on bullshit things like the border is a problem, needs to be fixed. Well, you had a fix given to you. It was your bill to fix it. You decided not to fix it. You decided not to pass your own bill. And we need our citizens to wake up. And I'm sorry I keep repeating myself, but I stay perpetually angry if you were to ask my wife, because I look at the television and I look at what's going on in Congress and the House of Representatives, and I see what's going on. And I'm going to say I actually despise a lot of those folks. I despise Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm not
Oh, I do
ashamed
too.
to say it. I despise her. But as much as I despise her, I have absolutely no sympathy for the people who voted to put her there. And I feel that way
No.
about everybody in that tribe. It's a question of survival right now in this country, and our side is fighting for its survival, and the other side is doing everything it can for us not to survive, even though what they're doing is killing them too. So, I'm an angry man tonight, Mike.
Well,
I
that's the
needed to be on the show to just get this all out and vent.
Well, I'm glad I could do that for you. We're coming down to the end here, but people will come up to me, Trump LaFlux, and they'll say, "Oh, you're just a Trump hater." Yeah, yeah. Do I hate somebody who sexually abuses women? Yeah, I hate them. Do I hate somebody who steals money from innocent people? Yeah, I hate them. Do I hate people that are trying to overthrow our country and undermine democracy? Yeah, I hate them. So what's your fucking point? If you don't hate them, you're the one with the fucking problem.
I, much love, brother, because I'm with you on all of it. And I'm not a Lincoln Project promoter, but they're handling the way that they make ads is exactly at the right tone that the Democrats need to do. Because again, it comes down to survival. And we need to strike first, strike harder, no mercy. I mean, that's what we need to do. We need to do that. And the Lincoln Project, which I follow, though those people I would have hated 10 years ago, they're doing exactly what they need to do. And the Democrats need to get on board, and they need to go, and need to go hard, and they need to spend the money. Thank God it looks like they have more money than the other side.
Yeah, definitely more money. I mean, RNC's down to $8 million. Somebody even sent me a note saying they're talking about they can't even afford to put on the convention because there's no money, which would be great if that happened, if they couldn't on a convention. I'll tell you this, I had my father, not my favorite person, not a great guy. He gave me one bit of advice that I value to this day. I'd be going to school and I might get in a little schoolyard fight now and again. And give you an idea, my dad was a parent, and he said, look, if you're in a fight and you're fighting a guy and there's a stick or a rock laying on the ground, pick that fucker up first because they're going to do it to you. Pick up the stick and hit him over the fucking head with it. And I'm not talking about literally in the case with politicians, but we've got to get that aggressive and be that strong. We've got people put it this way, people just have this innate feeling that they follow strong people. That's why Donald Trump got people following him. He was perceived as strong, even though he wasn't. He faked it. But the Democrats have to be strong. And that's why I'm saying when we get the changeover and Hakeem Jeffries is the Speaker of the House, we may see a whole different culture amongst Democrats because he's not like your average Democrat. And some of the other people in the House that are Democrats in the Senate, they're going to feel comfortable in speaking up and being tough. And we might see a whole different look to the Democratic Party.
Oh, there were some superstars, Moskovitz,
Yeah.
not Adam Schiff. You go on and on. There's some. They're not taking them. They're not taking any prisoners. And just to reiterate, when I say we need to strike hard, I want to make sure people understand the difference between us and them is we're going to strike, but it's not going to be violent. It's not going to be physical, but we're not going to pull our punches either.
No,
And we need to resist violence on both sides. But in all honesty, if they're violent, like they were during January 6th, then we need to prosecute and make sure that they pay a penalty for their stupidity and their violence.
I honestly don't. I honestly don't believe there's going to be any violence if Donald Trump gets convicted and thrown in jail and the Republicans lose. I think they tried it once. They had every possible advantage and they failed. They're bullies, so they only go into things where they believe there's a sure thing that they're going to win. And with Joe Biden in office and the National Guard working against them this time, they don't have the courage to start shit.
Mike, they're afraid of a girl.
I know.
They're
I know.
they're afraid of a girl. They're such snowflakes. They're afraid of a girl. They won't watch a football game with probably one of the greatest quarterbacks ever because there's a girl going out with a member of the team. Yeah, I'm not that worried about them. I mean, there's certainly some organizations within the right that are armed, but I think they know enough to keep themselves. What the biggest issue with violence comes from certain governors like Abbott and those who use the state, the resources of the state to cause conflict. But they're pussies. I mean, Trump is a pussy. I mean, I'm sorry to use that word, but he is. He needs an ass whooping. But I know he can't fight. I wish he would try to take a swing at Biden because I think Biden would whoop his ass.
Probably. People have talked to me about having t-shirts and hats and stuff like that. I don't know what the fuck I would do with that. But I was talking to my son who's helping me with that to come up with something to appease the folks that want it. And I said, how about this? You know, the circle with a line through it, meaning no.
Yeah, yeah.
In that circle, just put PAB, circle, cross, PAB. You know what that stands for? It's a
I don't.
it's a phrase I stole from Chrissy Teigen that I've used about Donald Trump and some of the others in the Republican Party. Pussy ass bitch. No pussy ass bitches. That's for the Republicans and that's for the Democrats. If you're going to
Yeah,
be a
yeah.
pussy, go in the corner and cry and let us fight this shit out.
I haven't. When Donald got elected, there was a lot of crying on the left. It was mostly young people, but boy, I've sure heard a lot of crying over the last few years from the right. And, you know, we're talking about guys with beards and you know, grown men, and you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene, for all her faults, she's stupid, but she's not a pussy. I think she'd fight any guy, anytime, anywhere. But we
Mar-
need to have our own versions, and we do have our own versions of her on the left. They're just a heck of a lot smarter, and they run rings around her.
Marjorie Taylor Greene reminds me of the guy I knew in high school. We all knew in high school. A little skinny guy with a bad attitude would say, I'll fight anybody. I don't care if I get my ass kicked. And I'm thinking, if you know you're getting your ass kicked, why would you wade into it? They're just stupid and crazy, and that's who she is. She's going to get her ass kicked every time she opens her mouth.
He was that guy that would walk with the white T-shirt and a pack of cigarettes rolled
Yeah.
up in his arm, and he'd swing at somebody, get his ass kicked, and then get back up, even though he's bloodied and want to keep fighting because he's too stupid to either run away or just end the fight. No, she's that whole side is it drives you nuts to listen to him. Comer, on and on and on. And our guys are just destroying him. AOC, another superstar. I try to follow her as much as possible.
Goldman, Raskin,
Yeah,
Katie Porter. It's it's
yeah,
it's 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 like
all-star team.
it's like shooting ducks in a barrel. It's not even hard for them. I mean, it's so easy.
It really is, and God bless them. You know, we need more like them in there. I hate to see them running for Senate because they're so much more fun in the House of Representatives. And I think they're all in safe districts. I mean, Katie Porter is probably going to lose to Adam Schiff in California, but that's okay. I'd like to see Katie stay in the House of Representatives. She's a brilliant person, and she's amazing to watch when she's at a committee meeting.
Yeah, she's a tough lady. All right, we are. Oh, I just want to mention one thing. This will be a big relief to you as I'm wrapping this up. I see it come across the wire, as they say. Apparently, this will be a big relief to you too. But
Okay, all right.
apparently, Marianne Williamson is dropping out of the primary against Joe Biden. Whoa!
I guess 95% for Biden in South Carolina. Kind of gave her a
So
hint.
let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that Joe picks up Marianne Williamson's 2%.
Yeah, yeah. And we're down. We need Kennedy to drop out.
You know
Uh,
what? I don't think Kennedy's a problem for us. I think he's more of a problem for the Republican Party. I've even heard some people rumor that Donald Trump wanted him as a vice president. By all means, do that.
take him. Who do you think No Labels is going to put up? I
I
heard
don't I,
Manson.
I
You
don't
know,
think No Labels is even going to show up, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't. They don't have any support. For a while there, they were going to kind of dip out of it anyway, and Joe Manchin comes in just to test the waters. And Democrats don't like Joe Manchin because he's an asshole, and Republicans don't like him because he's a Democrat. This fucker couldn't draw flies. So Joe Manchin won't be it. And other than that, who does No Labels have? It's a Republican supported thing. The only thing it could possibly do is hurt the Republican Party. So if they want to
I
step in
read
there, go
today
ahead.
Chris Christie might go over there, but same deal as Manson. Chris Christie is. I don't think he stands a chance.
Oh no, no. There's nobody that stands a chance. Like I've said, I don't believe there's any Republican that can beat any Democrat for the presidency. Not the way it is right now. I just don't see it. Just no way. The Republicans are too stupid. They will fuck it up, even if they have a chance, and the Democrats are on a win streak. So I think that's going to continue.
Well, thank you. I know we're ending. Thank you for having me on. As usual, when we get together, two old boomers just shooting the shit. I thought it was a great night. You allowed me to vent, and it's been months since I've been on the show. I sincerely appreciate you. I appreciate the show. I appreciate seeing you on social media. I think you're fighting a good fight. It's nice to know that you're out there representing us. It's nice to know that there are boomers who are still have a brain in their heads.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on. It's always a compelling conversation. I think a valuable conversation. And I wasn't exactly letting you vent. I'm getting old, so I need to pace myself more. When I do this show alone, it's fucking tiring. I don't know why it is, but it is. So when I have somebody on the show, it makes my life much easier. I don't have to think the entire hour. I only have to think part of the hour. So thank you for that.
Oh, I appreciate it. Obviously, you have a lot of trust in me because you let me speak.
No, no. I mean, if you're a listener, everybody has the opportunity to speak. So I have no problem with that. So, Tony, thanks for coming in today. For those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. Hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.